Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me this evening is a brother that I've had the pleasure of knowing for over 20 years. This man is an author, he is a writer, he is a speaker, he is a father of two beautiful daughters, he is a husband, he is a man of God. And guess what, everybody? This brother is family. This is my brother-in-law in the building today, and I'm so thankful that he's taking time out of his busy schedule to join us this evening. So without any further delay, let me introduce to you. It's my privilege, it's my honor to introduce to you my brother-in-law, Dr. Don Parker. Don, thank you so much for being with me this evening.
Thank you for having me, Joe. Man, I
Absolutely.
appreciate that illustrious introduction.
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
kind of weird hearing that from you since we are family, since we are so close. I'm just used to you like being like, "What's up, Don?" And you know how I call you? I'm like, "What up, Joe?" I gave you the nickname Joey Crack you know, after
Hey,
Fat Joe.
absolutely.
That's just kind of fun we like have, going back and forth.
Absolutely. But we keep it chill, we keep it relaxed here. I'm just introducing you to everybody else who hasn't had a chance to know you like I know you. So with that said, before we do jump into our segments for this evening, I do want, of course, to give you an opportunity to share a little bit about yourself. Give them, who you are, where you're from. Give them a little taste of who is Dr. Don Parker.
All right. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. My name is Dr. Don Parker, and I am a former physical education and health teacher. And from there, I became a dean of students. And then I became an assistant principal and then principal. And now I am an educational speaker. And I work with teachers to help them build relationships with students who have trauma to help them become more trauma informed. And I also work with principals to help them improve their climate and culture. And my motto is bringing out the best in teachers so that they can bring out the best in their students. So I just have a love and passion for education, have a love and passion for fitness and mental health. And of course, I have a love and passion for God. So I just ask God to continue using me as his instrument so I can have a positive impact on those who I come in contact with.
Love it, my brother. Love it so much. And like I said, this is my brother-in-law. Everybody, he's married to my wife's sister, Claudia, and you're going to have a chance in this season to get a chance and an opportunity to meet with her as well. So look forward to that coming up. But we're talking with Don this evening, and I'm glad to have my brother in the building. So hey, just jump right into this, man.
Hey, I appreciate that, Joe, because I'm just the appetizer. Claudia, she gonna be the real treat. She a
well,
powerhouse, man.
hey,
I'm just lucky to be connected to her.
and that's cool that you acknowledge your wife for all the greatness that she is. But tonight, focus is on you, my brother. We two brothers hanging out tonight, and we getting ready to drop some gems on some people. So I hope my audience is ready to get an opportunity to see what your journey has been like, and they'll be inspired and encouraged as a result of that. So with that said, when we talk about going through our journeys of life and the overcoming of different challenges and moments of adversity, you really can't fully capture the story without going back to the very beginning of it all. And that's exactly what we're about to do. So
Mhm.
the question I'd like to pose to you, if you would, take us back, man, to the beginning. I want you to reflect back on what it was like for you growing up. Of course, you and I both from Chicago growing up. Um, Tell everybody, if you would, kind of walk us through what was it like for you growing up, fond memories that come to mind about you growing up, as well as if there was any specific challenges that you'd like to share that you had to deal with in growing up. Please do that at this time. Kind of give us that backdrop of the beginnings of your journey.
Okay, yeah. So I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and I grew up across the street from a park. And so I spent a lot of time at the park playing football, playing basketball. I really love sports. So me and my friends would play sports from sun up to sundown. And the thing about my neighborhood is it was in the middle of two different gang territories. And so the great part about it is like we all grew up together. So I would know people from this gang from, in the opposite direction and then people from the other gang in the opposite direction. And it was all cool growing up. You never thought that people who you grew up with, you would see them turn into enemies just over, being in a different gang. But we all played Little League baseball together, grew up playing basketball together, the basketball court and things like that. And it's funny because a lot of us went to the same high school. And I love playing football. So when I got to high school, of course, I went out for the football team. And so as I go out to the football team, I'm like, where the rest of my homies at? And so I was seeing him in Hall the next day, like, bro, football trials was yesterday. Where were you at? He's like, man, I ain't joining that football team. There's too many members of the opposite gang on that team. I'm like, come on, man. We grew up playing football together. Imagine if we all got on the same high school football team and we're playing together. Imagine how good we would be. I'm like, y'all need to forget all that. See, I was a neutron. And like the gangbangers wouldn't mess with you if they knew you were an athlete. You know what I mean? So back in those days, it's different now. But back in those days, if you're walking through a certain neighborhood and they ask, hey, what are you? You'd be like, yo, I'm a neutron. And I'd be like, yo, I'm an athlete. And they'd be like, okay, he cool, leave him alone. Like if they knew you weren't in the opposite gang or anything like that, they would kind of just give you a pass. And so, I was a well-known athlete in the neighborhood because, like I said, I grew up with other people in the neighborhood. We knew each other. And so that's what it was like growing up for me, man. Just having fun, playing sports, and, just enjoying life. I had a great childhood. I cannot sit up here and tell you that I had a lot of trauma or a lot of, bad things that happened to me. Of course, I experienced a lot of things that, a typical black boy would experience growing up in the neighborhood. But, there's a quote that says, um, a fool will learn from his own mistakes, but a wise man will learn from the mistakes of others. And so I saw a lot of my friends get into trouble, doing things that they shouldn't do, and I see how their life didn't like go on the right path. And so me seeing that, I never wanted to get caught up in any of that. So, lucky for me, I had a great mom who kept me on the right path. I had a father who, of course, reared me in a correct way. And one thing was fortunate for me is I was more afraid of my mama than I was afraid of the gangs. My mama wasn't having it, you know? So I'm sure you can share some similar experiences growing up on the south side of Chicago yourself, Joe. You know how it is.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. That's good stuff, man. And what you mentioned in particular that jumped out to me was the fact that you spoke about how back in the day there used to be a thing where when it came to the gangs, because of course in my neighborhood it was the same thing, same issue with the gang presence around there. And but back in the day, it was like if they knew that you were one of those kids that had his head on straight, that whether it was I am an athlete or I'm good in school or whatever, it was almost like there was like this unwritten code where we're not gonna mess with him because he's got his stuff together, or in some instances maybe because they knew who your parents were, they weren't gonna mess with you because your parent knew their parents. But nevertheless, there was a sort of a safe space for some of us who were on that right path, on that right track, in that right mindset. And I'm glad that you accredited that. A lot of that had to do with coming up with your parents setting those boundaries, establishing those standards of excellence for you, so that you didn't get kind of caught up in all that stuff. Because like yourself, I too had friends of mine growing up that, as you stated, would ultimately get into that gang life, and some of them would be in rival gangs or whatever, and for some of them, unfortunately, it led to them landing in jail, and for a couple of them it actually cost them their lives being caught up in that
Hmm.
life. So I definitely consider ourselves fortunate whenever we're able to have grown up in that type of setting, but then at the same time being one of the fortunate ones, having God's covering over our lives to, that to basically set us apart and saying, hey, I got some plans for these young men. They may not even know what those plans are just yet, but I
Hmm.
want to make sure that they're protected. I want to make sure that they're safeguarded. Not so much putting you in a bubble. You had a chance to be exposed to see what was right and what was wrong around you, but at the same time, just preparing you for what lied ahead. In terms of how you would be gifted and how you would use those gifts ultimately throughout the course of your life. So I appreciate you bringing that up, and just like I said, it just triggers back memories, like you said, to the life growing up as a black kid on the south side of
Yeah,
Chicago, and what that experience is like. And unfortunately, as you stated, it's nothing like that anymore.
it's
It's a
nothing like that
total.
anymore. It was respect, back in the days. It's like right now when I watch the news, you see like senior citizens getting robbed, getting shot, getting carjacked. Like that was against the rules, like growing up when we grew up together, And same thing. It's like you really didn't mess with people unless they were from the rival gang. They were your targets. But now it's like, you know, these people who caught up in that stuff are targeting just about anybody, and that's not right. I mean, not that it was right beforehand, but I'm just saying there were certain rules and things that you would follow. And so I remember like going to the corner store and things like that, and then somebody look at you crazy, and you're like, "Come on, man, really?" Like we grew up playing little league together. Used to copy off
Right.
my math homework. They're like, "Come on, I know you ain't trying to give me a hard time." Like, for real, what's up,
Exactly.
bro? You know what I mean? You know how it is, Joe. It's like it's
Absolutely.
funny how you see people growing up and how they change over time. And you're right. That's why we are blessed, because some people have had some really negative and bad experiences. That where you can see how why they turned out the way they turned out. Other people just made a choice. You know that's the life they chose for themselves. Other people they didn't choose it. So you're right. Just fortunate that God always had a hedge of protection over us and just kept us on the right path. So he can use this as his instrument. Not saying that he can't use others as his instrument either, but
Hmm.
I'm just so glad that right now I'm healthy, saved and blessed.
There you go. There you go. That's the key right there. So good stuff. Good stuff, man. So let's delve a little bit deeper into your story here. And what I'm looking at this point, we make it through our childhood. Obviously, you go to school, you come into your adulthood, you're doing life as a young adult, trying to find your way, trying to find your purpose in life. But one of the things that we know about going through life is that at some point you live long enough, you're going to come across situations and circumstances that are going to pose some challenges for you. And in some instances, you might come across an experience that is so challenging to you that you might actually be doubting, how am I going to make it through this particular situation? I'm pretty good at navigating through at moments of adversity, but this particular situation hits a little different. This is a little bit heavier on me. This is something that I might be questioning. How am I going to get through this? We know that you're here today with us, so we know whatever that situation was for you, you managed to make your way through it. But if you would, tell us about a time when you found yourself in that situation where it looked like there was no way out of this thing that you were up against. It was overwhelming you, it was stressing you out, but you managed to be able to have that breakthrough moment to to overcome that challenging situation and be here today to even be able to tell us about it. If you would, tell us about one such situation that might have occurred in your life like that, and kind of walk us through what that experience was like for you.
All right. Yeah. So like I said earlier, I started off as a PE teacher and I built my career in education. And so in education, there's something that's called being rift, where it's a reduction in force.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get rift, that means you lose your job and you basically have to look for another job. And so there were times in my career where I was rift and I was like, okay, well, this happens. That's how it goes. It's, the last hired, the first fired. But basically, it was a lot of openings. You just put your resume out there, contact a few people who work in the place where you're interested in, working. And next thing you'll have a job. And so, I was kind of used to that, but I was fortunate enough to get tenure at a lot of places where I was employed. However, there was one time where I was in fear of not having employment. And it's funny because, like I said, I had been riffed one or two times, but I would always, get a job and I was always able to um, provide for my family. But it was one instance where I was in fear of losing my job. And it was crazy because I had landed what I thought was my dream job, because I was a high school athletic director and assistant principal. My title was assistant principal for activities and athletics. And I love that because I was able to combine my love and passion for school leadership along with my love for sports and athletics. But where the challenge came in is I made a mistake in paperwork. So you're supposed to fill out documents for every student that transfers into your school and then joins the sports program. And you have to make sure that the other school is aware that that athlete transferred into your school and marks them eligible in order to participate in the sports program. Where, well, I had this uh, one athlete who was a basketball player, and our basketball team was really good this year. she transferred in. She used to attend the school. So she participated on a basketball team when she was a freshman and sophomore. And then she transferred out. But then she came back the following year. And, it just didn't click in my mind that she had transferred out. So when I saw on the roster, I didn't think anything of it. And so she participated in most of the games during the season. And, she was having a good season. Our girls basketball team was having a good season. We had some good athletes. They won a lot of games. And then a school alleged a case against us that we were playing an ineligible athlete. And I found out that it was the athletic director of the school that she transferred out of. And so at the beginning of the year, the coach had brought me other transfer players who had transferred into the school, but he didn't bring me this particular student. Mm-hmm. And so the state agency, when they looked at the case, I presented them with the paperwork, and I did tell them that, I did miss it because she was a former student, and the coach didn't bring her to me at the beginning of the school year like he brought in the other, like 2 transfers who had transferred into the school. At the end of the day, it was still a mistake that I made. And so the state administrators, the way that they punished our school was by saying we had to forfeit all those games that we had won.
Wow.
That season. And it was right before the playoffs. And it hit the news, my principal found out, my school superintendent found out, and they were so mad that they placed me on administrative leave. Mm-hmm. And when you get placed on administrative leave, in the school district as a school employee, really the next step is where you be fired or terminated. I was so in fear of my job because at this point, me and Claudia had our second daughter. She was a stay-at-home mom. I was a breadwinner. So it's like if I didn't have a job, that means we were going to lose our family income, lose our insurance and our health benefits. And Joe, I was so afraid because I was thinking like this is the end of not only this job, but also the end of my career. And how am I going to take care of my family? Because now I have what would paint me as having a bad reputation. And I was feeling I was going to be unhireable, basically, is how I felt. And so I was very afraid. I prayed, I was thinking about, getting a lawyer, to, defend me and defend my reputation and everything like that. And just to see it from my side from my vantage point, as far as everything that happened. And I was thinking that all the equity that I had, built in that position, and even with the state organization, and I was an AD at that point for 4 years. I did a lot of good, in the school where I worked for. A lot of students got scholarships. I grew the sports programs were successful. And I was thinking, surely, this is a mistake. I'll take whatever punishment they give, but it's not a fireable offense. It's funny because, they say that God works in mysterious ways. Mm-hmm. And so we have 3 high schools in that district. Okay. One of the other athletic directors made the same mistake. And so when they saw that he made the same mistake, they said, you know what? My superintendent was like, it's bad that our girls have to forfeit the games that they played in because they worked hard in order to win those games. But they said they see how it wasn't an ethical mistake. It wasn't a question of integrity. It was just, an honest mistake that anybody can make. And then they looked at my track record. I hadn't had any blemishes on my record up until that point. So I believe that God touched the heart of the decision makers. Where they said, okay, well, we're going to bring him back. He will continue in his job. We'll let him clean up everything that he needs to clean up in his office to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And so, Joe, by the grace of God, I was able to maintain my job. Our girls basketball team was able to compete in the state playoffs. They did really good, they advanced and everything like that. But by the end of the day, God's mercy reigned because I was able to maintain that job and that position until it's time for me to move on. But you know, I'm just grateful that that worked out, in my favor, as opposed to being a
Yes.
career killer.
Wow, wow. What a powerful story, man. And of course I didn't know that that happened to you, but I appreciate, first of all, I appreciate your transparency and in sharing that. And I can only imagine what that level of stress and tension that was for you. Ask any man who considers himself to be, a responsible man, father, husband, concerned about the well-being of his family. There's very few feelings that can really get to you as a man when you are the provider of your home, when you feel like I'm now in a position to where that possibly is getting ready to be jeopardized and I'm not able to fulfill those responsibilities and duties. And so you feel some kind of way about that. And
Hmm.
it's hard to put into words, but you know to your point of your story, but God,
Hmm.
when you are someone who is a follower of God, when you have a relationship with God, he has a way of being able to step in moments that seem otherwise to be impossible to overcome. Because the truth of the matter is, this was a situation that you just shared that you had nothing to offer, to go off of, to turn this thing around. You were literally at the mercy of, however this thing is going to play out. But that's the
Hmm.
thing about God, is that God will allow us from time to time to be in such a vulnerable position to where all we can depend upon is him. He's like our
Hmm.
only option. So you spoke about, Joe, I prayed on this. I was like, basically, please, Lord, intervene on this. Do whatever it is, something to help me to stay employed so I don't lose out on my, not only on my job and the benefits that come along with it, but that I don't allow my career to just be, destroyed as a result of what was otherwise just an honest mistake.
Yeah.
But again, God has to do that to us from time to time because it's important for us to be dependent upon him, that we don't get so comfortable and things flowing along and everything going well, because in those moments when we kind of get in those positions, sometimes we can start to get to feeling our own selves and thinking that we're responsible for all of this. And he sort of
Hmm.
has to remind us from time to time, hey, I'm the source of making this all happen. I'm pulling the strings here. And so I look at this as an opportunity for um, God to speak to you in that moment and say, hey, I just want to make sure that we stay close with each other.
That's
That's
true.
I'm not saying that you were drifting away or not. That's not for me to make that call on. But every now and then God says, look, I got some stuff for you. Like even
Hmm.
at that moment, you had no idea what you were doing then versus what you do today. You had
Hmm.
no idea what was to lie ahead for you, but God knew what was to lie ahead for you. So he had to make sure that you are riding with him throughout that journey, throughout that process. So he has to kind of break us down a little bit, not to
Yeah.
hurt us, not to overwhelm us, not to stress us out, but to teach us, to
Hmm.
make sure that that relationship is solid, so that we always know that he's our source for overcoming any challenges, any obstacles that come our way. And that's why it played out the way that it did. This wasn't luck at all. This was God's intervention.
Oh yeah,
So
definitely.
you had an opportunity to, quote unquote, clean it up. Your girls had an opportunity to still play forward, even though they had to forward the losses. And clearly your reputation wasn't ruined, because God has opened up so many doors since then
Hmm.
for you, and you're doing great works to this day. So
Hmm.
I see that as a turning point in you leveling up to that next uh plateau, if you will, of God's favor and God's blessings upon your life and how he intended to use you. But he had to intervene to make sure that your mindset was right and that your heart was right and you're connected up, in alignment with him,
Yeah,
and not
and
yourself or not man or whatever. So go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, you're exactly right, and that's why it's so important to stay connected to God. Claudia and I went on a double date with um, two people who lead a church. They lead a
Mm-hmm.
church, so we went on a double date with them. Married couple. They've been married for a while. You know, really good people. They're blessed. Life is going really good, and so I will speak to the gentleman because he's older than me. And so I
Mm-hmm.
really do believe in, role modeling myself after others who have experienced success and just learning from them. And so I asked him, I was like, hey, you know what? Just, you know, tell me, how are things continuing to go so well for you, and you've grown the church, and you and your wife and marriage is strong. Your kids are great. Like, kind of tell me, what are some of your secrets to success? And so he was telling me how he just stays connected to God. And he was speaking directly to me without knowing he was speaking directly to me. He like, some people would just drift away from God, but then when trouble happens in their life, then they would drift closer to God and they're asking God for help. But he said the trick is to stay close to God.
There you go.
So you continue to stay blessed, because we humans, and just like in that position, it's definitely a cross the T and dot the I kind of position, but we all make mistakes. But that's just the goodness of God, where we could be connected, because, he gives us grace, because we're going to make mistakes. We're going to mess up. And so now, looking back at that situation, uh, yes, I was very afraid of losing my job, and I didn't know what was going to happen next. But now, with me being even more mature in Christ, now I could look back and be like, even if I lost that job, God was going to fix it where I was going to be okay.
Exactly.
So I say that now, all
Right,
big and
right.
bad. But the truth of the matter is, I wasn't as mature, you know, as I should have been in that moment in my faith.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. And again, think about what you do today. I mean, you are coming alongside educators at all levels, speaking on the subject matter of, how to connect and relate to students of trauma.
Hmm.
Students have gone through some stuff, or maybe their backgrounds are not like everybody else's, and things of that nature. Maybe they've made some mistakes in
Hmm.
life. Don't hold that against them. Don't restrict their opportunity to learn and to grow and to bounce back from whatever those moments of trauma or whatever those moments of I made a mistake moments were. Don't hold that against them. So again, this is all, to me, this is all a part of that journey process where, God is saying, I'm going to have you one day speaking on stages in front of people who need to have that same grace, who need to have that same mercy, who need to have that same understanding, that same empathy, that same compassion for other people, that, hey, we all make mistakes. Nobody's perfect.
Hmm.
Even if the mistake that you made was intentional. The point is we all make bad judgment calls sometimes. We
Hmm.
all slip up sometimes. That doesn't make us this horrible person. That doesn't make us somebody that needs to just be canceled in that
Right.
moment. Somebody needs to be able to say, okay, let's acknowledge what you did, which you did, and let's
Hmm.
see what can we do to fix it and make sure that moving forward, we don't run into a similar situation like that in the future. That's
Right.
what you did. You know,
And I'm
over.
and I'm and I'm gonna tell you, it's so true, because a lot of people do want to, you know, not be vulnerable and portray that everything is perfect and everything like that. But, we all know that everything is not perfect. And so I don't want to get in front of people and not be real. Okay.
Hmm.
Because in order to help people, you have to share some of your, not only your triumphs, but also, where you may have made mistakes, where you may have, fallen short. Because just like they can learn from you telling them, the right things to do, they could also learn, from the mistakes that you made. And then they realize, hey, you know what? This is a person who I really can learn from, because I can connect with them, because, they're willing to share.
Exactly. Exactly. I love that. Love that, man. So, with that said, um, when you find yourself faced with challenges, whether it's, I mean, obviously your story that you share was one of those major challenges, but whether it's something major like that, or even if it's just some of the, the minor everyday stuff that we sometimes, might come across that we have to deal with, that little moment of adversity or challenge that we're up against. I'm curious to know from you, what is it that you like to do? What is sort of your routine that you like to go through, that when you find yourself, if today is one of those days that you got something on your plate that's a challenge that you got to deal with, a problem that you got to address. What process do you like to go through that works for you, that helps you to do it with a clear mindset, but at the same time help you work through that thing without it, consuming you, without it getting the best of you, but you ultimately getting to the resolution that you need to get to overcome that challenge? What
Hmm.
is your process?
Well, I'm sure you're familiar with one of my favorite verses. It's probably one of your favorite verses as well. It says, lean not to thy own understanding, in all our ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. And
Mhm.
so I will, come down to the basement early in the morning before everybody else in the house wakes up. Just have some quiet time, uh, connect with the Lord. And then I would, give him the issue that I'm having and just ask for direction.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I would think about it, and sometimes I might be led to call somebody else who may have experienced, the same challenge that I've had. Sometimes I may just get revelation and just hear from the Lord as I just think quietly and meditate on it. So, there's various ways that I've, met challenges and, sought the right direction. Sometimes it's from mentors who I might call, or people who are important to me, who's had an impact in my life. And I could call them and, share my situation with them. And they can talk to me and kind of be like, you know what, been there, done that. This is how I handled it. Maybe here's some things that you should consider as you, work through this challenge. And so basically, I just first seek the Lord and ask him what direction he wants me to move in, and also call other people who may have had similar situations who can offer me some good advice or some guidance, or ask me the right questions to help me self-reflect so I can, come to the solution, more quicker.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I love that, man. I love, obviously, when we're having these conversations about God, we know people automatically expect to say, well, I pray on it, I talk to God. Well, and that's good. I think everybody should do that. That's
Hmm.
almost like the given. But I think a lot of times what people miss, and I want people to understand just from what you just said, is that it's also important for you to have a good circle of people around you that
Hmm.
you can call upon, that you can be vulnerable and transparent in front of, that you can seek godly advice from, and
Hmm.
they will tell you not what you want to hear, but what you need to hear.
Sure.
But they'll do it in love. They'll do
Hmm.
it not to hurt you, not to demean you or anything like that, but just giving you some sound advisement that you can take and apply immediately to your situation, in hopes of being able to not only work your way through that challenge, but of course, keeping those nuggets in your head, so where if something like this arises again, that's that circle of folks that I have in my corner that genuinely and authentically want the best for me. They want to see me do well. They want to see me succeed. I know I have that set of people that I can lean on for those type of moments. And it doesn't even have to be a big circle of folks. It doesn't require a crowd of hundreds or anything like that. It could just be a select few folks that you can count on. And so it's good to hear you say that hey, I got this group of people that I can reach out to if I need to, that God has specifically partnered me with.
Hmm.
Uh, because that's one of the other benefits about being in relationship with God, is that He will give you the discernment of identifying who needs to be in that circle and who doesn't. So that
Hmm.
way you're not seeking counsel, you're not seeking advisement from somebody who doesn't mean you well, or you're
Sure.
not seeking guidance from somebody who is not going to speak to you in a way that is in alignment with the way that God would like for you to address that particular challenge. They're going to give you the proper and appropriate advisement, so that way you're not again being led down a path of destruction or setting yourself up for failure in that situation.
And,
So,
and and that's true. That's why relationships are so important.
mm,
And you do need to have a core group of friends, a core group of mentors, a core group of spiritual leaders who you can call on when you need to, or just stay connected with, because um, you see that life is going good with them, see that God is blessing them. And hey, you know what, Joe? I want to hang around people that God is blessing, so He will bless me too.
there you go. There you go. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's actually who you should be hanging. I need to be hanging around with people who's doing it better than I do it.
Hmm.
And whether that be financially, whether that be emotionally, mentally, spiritually, people who are elevated in the areas that I want to be elevated in, I need to be connecting with them, because obviously they know some things that I don't know, that I could perhaps grasp some nuggets from and grow on
Yes.
that and build myself up. And then in turn, using my gifts and talents that God has placed in me, I can then recycle that back to others
Yes.
seeking the same thing. So it's an endless, cycle, but it's a godly cycle. It's doing it the
Hmm.
right way and in the right
You're exactly right, and that's
in
the
the right
same thing,
dynamic.
because iron sharpens iron, and sometimes
Mhm.
people ring my phone, and they be like, Earlier today, someone called me. It was a fellow education speaker. He's like, "Hey, Doc, how do you handle this? This is the situation I'm in." And he told me the scenario he was in. He said, "How would you handle this?" And so I just spoke with him on the phone, telling him, "Hey, you know what? When I was in this similar situation, this is how I handled it, and it worked out good for me. So, take what you will, but I'm happy to help you any way I can." And so we have to be there for each other.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. I love that. I love that. So, Don, if you had an opportunity, man, I know we spoke earlier about your upbringing and you had a pretty solid childhood. You for the most part, I mean, I'm sure just like any kid, we bump our heads here and there, but you pretty much were able to avoid the pitfalls and the traps. But you just like yourself and myself, we had friends who didn't.
Hmm.
And even in your space right now, when you're talking to educators and even sometimes talking directly to young people, if you had an opportunity to offer up some words of encouragement, thinking about the ones that those friends of yours who did get sidetracked, who did get led astray by that life, and unfortunately didn't have an opportunity to live out the true selves that they could have been, the greatness that was in them that they never got an opportunity to experience. If you had an opportunity to speak to the young those young people and give them some words of encouragement on what they need to do, where their head needs to be at, where their focus needs to be, what insight would you have to share for them in hopes that in doing this they might be able to experience some of the blessings and greatness, not necessarily doing it exactly like you do, but in their own path, in their own space that God intended for them to do? What would those words of advisement be?
Okay. Well, my words of advice will be to learn from every situation that you're in. Okay. And don't be sad and don't ask why this happened to me, or don't ask why this is happening to me, but in turn ask, what am I supposed to learn as a result of this happening to me? Okay. And really, I would also tell them to just, think about what your end goal is, and think about, is that end goal that's something healthy, and just, you know, stay true to your values, and, just, you know, of course we all make mistakes, right? But at the end, we want to try to do what's right and to do the right thing. And so when you make mistakes, don't feel like your life is over. Okay. You learn from that mistake and you move on. And then you always think about, what is God's purpose for my life? And how can I get on that path that's going to lead me to his purpose? Okay, what desire did he place in my heart? Or what problem is out there that I feel like I'm equipped to solve? And so you think about your movements, and you want to move in a way where you're helping others, where you're serving others. And what that does, it brings joy back to you. Because for a long time, Joe, I would ask myself, like, really, what is my purpose? A lot of times I felt unfulfilled, and I would just sit and pray and pray and pray day after day, day after day. Lord, please reveal your purpose for my life. And just because you don't know what God's purpose is, you just continue to grow your relationship with him. You just continue to stick to your values and just be intentional about what you do. And then one day it will be revealed. All right. And every situation that you find yourself in is for a reason, because you're going to need all of those lessons that you learned in order to serve the purpose that God has for you, because you draw back on those experiences and use those experiences to help others, and you use those experiences to make you stronger so that you can, serve the purpose that God has for you.
I love that. I love that. I specifically love the fact that you focused on, you know, don't get caught up in the why is this happening to me? Because we can easily fall in that trap.
Hmm.
We think somehow that, and unfortunately, we see that a lot today with our younger people and even with some of our seasoned folks, where we almost feel like nothing is supposed to happen to us. Like we're not supposed to go through the storms of life. Well, newsflash, everybody's going to go through storms of life in your younger years, in your mid years, in your senior years. It's going to happen. Your storm
Hmm.
may not be mine and mine not may be yours, but we're going to go through some stuff. But instead of focusing on, the fact that you're in the midst of a storm, hey, let's look at this thing and say, okay, I mean, don't get me wrong. You're still human. So you have a right to have that, that reaction to it, So if it's anger, if it's sadness or whatever, you can have that initial moment, but then you just can't stay stuck there. At some
Mm-hmm.
point, you have to say, okay, let me catch my breath. Okay, now what am I supposed to get from this? Now that I'm here in this storm, what am I supposed to glean from this? What am I supposed to draw from this? Because again, a storm can't even come your way unless God allows for it to come. So if
Mm-hmm.
he's allowing for it to come, and we know that God makes no mistakes, then clearly he's allowing that to come because there's something you're supposed to get out of it that again is going to grow you, develop you, strengthen you, and of course draw you nearer to him. And so you
Exactly.
have to, when you start looking at it that way, when you start looking at storms as being a negative thing, and instead flipping it and looking at it as an opportunity, your whole perspective changes, and that all of that anxiety and that fear and that stress, you start to minimize and eventually eliminate that kind of stuff, because now, which is why the Bible speaks about, count it all joy.
Mm-hmm.
Even when you're going through, count that means God got something for you. So
Sure.
don't trip about it. It may not feel good right now.
Uh-huh.
It may be, have you a little bit worked up, but understand you're not even having to go through this thing by yourself. He's with you. So
That's
it is
true. And
it's not, the concern is not about the why and or how am I going to get through. You're going to get through because of him. All you need to
exactly.
do is take the steps necessary to move forward. Any resources that you need along the way that you don't currently have, he'll provide that.
Mm-hmm.
Any barriers or obstacles that you come along the way, along the path, he's with you. So that's not a fight you're going to lose, because the last time I checked, God is undefeated. He has no
Mm-hmm.
losses on his record. So if he's taking
Undefeated.
you down that path, you good to go. The victory is yours. You don't worry
Yep.
about the how. You just go do your part, and he's got everything else, and you just have to lean and rely upon him. So I appreciate you focusing on that part of, hey, let's pay attention to this journey, and of course thinking about what's the end goal, because
Mm-hmm.
that's key too. Where am I trying to be? What's the ultimate? Now I know that
Mm-hmm.
this is not going to all happen overnight, but I should at least know where I'm going. I don't want to just be just out here just willy-nilly, no, with no direction, no sense of guidance or anything of that sort. I should at least have something that I'm shooting for. But
Sure.
all the in between, that journey part, this is where me and God partnered up,
Mm-hmm.
work our way through it, and it's at its appointed time, in its appointed moment, I will reach that goal as long as I'm keeping my heart and my mind and my ears open to him, letting him guide me and not questioning, because it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to make sense to me. All I have to do is know it's coming from him. He could tell me to hop on one foot, close one eye, and spin around. If that's what he say do, we know that he never loses. His
Mm-hmm.
plans are perfect. So
Right.
if that's what he says do, let's roll with that and just do it. Just
Yeah. And it becomes another story in your book. It becomes another chapter in your book.
there you go.
And you have to pass the test to get to the testimony.
Hmm.
And the Lord wants you to have the testimony, because in the end, like I said, you know, in your story, you give God the glory. God wants the glory. So he will give you that story. So in the end, you will win. Just like you said, God is undefeated. When you partner with God, you know, you can be undefeated too, because
Hmm.
God wants the glory. So as and a lot of the things that I share to help other people is through those stories, through those testimonies, to encourage others who may be going through something similar, maybe going through the same thing, and I could take that story and share it with them, and it just encourages them. And they know that, you know what, now I have a different perspective on things that's going on
Exactly.
in my life.
And that's why you've been so effective in being able to resonate with the people that you go before, because they know, hey, we know he's educated and all, but he's not just telling us stuff that he's reading out of a book. He's not
Hmm.
just telling us stuff that somebody, that he heard about. You're speaking from actual life experiences of things that you've gone through, and you're telling other people, you're showing other people that, hey, you too can go through these same challenges and still ultimately overcome those challenges and be successful and be a blessing to other people. So
Hmm.
that's that's
Hmm.
that's good. That's good stuff, man. That's really good
Thank you. I
stuff.
appreciate it. I appreciate it.
So before I let you go, of course, man, as is customary here on the podcast, man, we want to have an opportunity to love on you, to celebrate you, to acknowledge you. So please, if you would, share with us if you got anything coming up, any projects you got ongoing coming up, anything that you'd like to share with our audience that we need to know about you, how to connect with you. Please do that at this time, because again, we want to celebrate you, want to
Okay,
acknowledge you.
sure. Well, there's issues going on in education where students have disruptive behavior, or students have a lot of trauma, which causes them to have challenging behavior. So teachers are really trying to figure out how to best serve these students so that they can serve their academic and social emotional learning needs. What I do as a speaker is I give teachers tools, and I work with teachers so that they can better serve those students who have trauma, and that they can better, work with students who have challenging behavior so that they can meet students' academic needs and social emotional needs. So if you know any school leaders or any teachers who need the kind of professional development that I do, then please encourage them to reach out to me. My email is drdonparker@drdonparker.com. And if there's principals who are having a hard time just getting their school back on the right track as far as resetting their culture and climate in order to create a healthy culture where all teachers and staff feel like they belong and where there's a safe culture and climate in the building, then they can also reach out to me, because this is the kind of problem that I solve through my experience as a school leader, through my expertise, through my scholarship. That's my niche. That's what I study. And a lot of people also reach out to me to find out, Don, how did you go from being a teacher or a principal into now doing professional development and becoming an educational speaker and an educational consultant? And so people reach out to me on LinkedIn, on Facebook Messenger. They email me and they ask me all the time, can we meet on a Zoom, or can we meet at Starbucks for a coffee? Because I just want to pick your brain on how you became a professional development provider and a successful education speaker. And so what I've done, Joe, is I've created a course. It's called Increase Your Income and Impact as a Professional Development Provider. And what I do in my course is I teach people step by step, everything I did to, build a business, being a professional educational professional development provider and a professional education speaker, and how you can also do the same thing if you follow these steps that I took in order to become a successful professional development provider. So I lay it all out for them in my course. And so if people are interested in doing this work, they can just reach out to me, shoot me an email, or just go to my website, drdonparker.com, and click on the link that says online courses, and it'll take them right to how they can register for my online course on how to increase their income and impact as a professional development provider.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Good stuff, man, with the course. Of course, you got your book out now, your latest book out as well. So people, educators, get plugged in. This brother is doing some great and magnificent things, and you just don't want to miss out on these gems that he's dropping. So I thank you so much.
That's another thing, Joe. I want to plug my book with you. So my first book is called Building Bridges, Engaging Students at Risk Through the Power of Relationships. And my second book is called Be the Driving Force, Leading Your School on the Road to Equity. And so they can also look at the suggestions that I wrote in my book and the problems that are being solved as a result of picking up a copy of my book.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
So you heard my part here.
I know. We see daddy's attention is being drawn, so it's cool.
Daddy's attention is being drawn by my baby girl.
It's cool. She's excited. It's cool. That's great. That's great stuff. And I thank you, man. I thank you so much for taking the time out to be with us this evening and dropping these gems and sharing your story with us. I'm certain that people are going to be blessed by what you shared. I know I was blessed by what you said. So I thank you. It's okay. Do your daddy thing. Do your daddy thing. It's all right. That's all right. See, that's the thing about being daddy's girl. Daughters don't they don't get enough of you. They want your attention, they want your time, they want your love. So man, you got no arguments from me. I got my own daughter.
She try to give me a kiss. She don't understand that we live taping the show.
It's cool, man. It's no problem. There you go. Hey man, no problem at all. That's right. Show daddy that love. I mean, we don't get enough of that. We love we love it. So
I won't complain about that, Joe.
No complaints at all.
Well, thank you for having me as a guest on your show. I love what you're doing. Keep up the great work. You are blessing so many people. Continue letting God use you as an instrument, and I'm just happy to be a part of it.
And I thank you so much for taking the time out to do this. And for those of my listeners who tuned in, if you've been blessed, if you have enjoyed the content for today, of course, please subscribe, please share, please like, please comment. Tell everybody that you know about the Blessings in the Streets podcast, because this is what we do here. We inspire, we encourage, we uplift. We share our stories, our journeys with you to let you know that no challenges that you might be going through are too big for you to overcome. But the key thing is making sure that God is a part of the equation, that you are connected with him, that you have that relationship with him. I promise you, if this is not a decision that you make, it'll be the best decision that you'll ever make by making that decision to be connected with him, because there's nothing that is too big for him to handle in your lives. So with that said, remember, here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, this is the place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and where your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, keep fighting that good fight. Stay strong. Stay connected to God. Lean on him for that understanding and that direction. I promise you, he will not lead you astray. Everything that he has for you is to bless you, is to grow you, is to enhance you, is to utilize those gifts that he specifically placed in you. So don't turn that opportunity away. Be the best version of yourself that he can be, that you can be, for his glory and for his honor. So until next time, I'll see you then.
All right. Thanks, Joe.